Agnès Varda, who is often dubbed the grandmother of the new wave, has a film career stretching back to the 50s. She and her late husband Jacques Demy founded the film company Cine Tamaris, and she still lives and works in the same area of Paris where she first came to live in the 14th arrondissement. When you started off your career, Agnès Varda, you were a woman among many men. You were about the only woman, in fact, working as a director at that particular time. Can you tell us a little bit about what it felt like, and did that give you an advantage, perhaps, or a disadvantage?
Well, I would say, if you believe me, it was not an advantage or an exception. I didn't think of it. I never had in mind that being a woman was something which should make me think that I was different. I had brothers and sisters. I never thought I was less, let's say, intelligent or less stupid than my brother, you know. I always thought, let's do what we have to do. And I didn't know movies when I started. At 25, I had seen maybe 10 films in all my life, including the children films. So I don't come from the world of movie making or cahiers du cinéma or anything. And in a way, I didn't know if, you know, who had made films and who was filmmaker. As for creating, well, I never questioned that. I found out when my first film, La Pointe Courte, was discovered or shown, that they all wrote a filmmaker has born, or this is new cinema, and then later they called me the grandmother of the new wave, since it was 6 years before the new wave. But never ever everybody said, you know, this is one woman coming out of nowhere. Now, we found out, time going by, that new wave bunch in which I was included, there was only me at the beginning, you know. Well, I was always saying, why the hell the women are not making films? This is, especially being a director, you know, you don't need to have muscle, you don't need to be big and strong, you don't need to be male, you don't need to be, I don't know, a fighter or karate or something. And well, it's coming. Now, in the last 5 years, we have in France a bunch of women writers and directors, very interesting. I would say they are even bringing more invention and more creation than men. In the last 5 years, I'd say. So it's a question of time, I would say. History has a long, you know, is slow. But history of films, if I may say so, will bring women now a lot, and let's say 20 years, I mean, you will just have films and not even question that.
You've always regarded yourself as a bit of an outsider. Do you still feel apart from the filmmaking community?
Yeah, I think I've been always a kind of outsider. Because they had groups, you know, they have groups like the Cahiers du Cinéma people, there were writers, there were critics, there were reviewers, and there were other groups from, well, it's not that I don't belong, you know, I'm French cinema with other people, women and men, but I've been always quite independent, and my company that I started years ago, called Tamaris, Cine Tamaris, is producing the films when nobody wants to produce them. So, because most of the time producers don't want my project, I end up not being with the famous producer, the famous bunch of people, and I even try to make my editing rooms near the house so I could raise the children and be near home. And so I didn't function, I would say, like most of the people.
You once said that a filmmaker should still exercise as much freedom as a writer. Do you still believe in that?
Did I say that?
Yeah, I believe so.
To whom?
I don't know exactly to whom, but
No,
there's
no.
a quote somewhere.
It's impossible, you know. Impossible. The freedom of a writer is enormous. He needs a pencil, he needs paper, he needs to be good, he needs to be talented, maybe to know something or not about life, but he needs to invent and write. His freedom is enormous. Now, will he be published is another story. But as creating a book, I mean, he's free like a bird, like 20 birds. When we are not, I mean, I can write a beautiful screenplay or a stupid screenplay, but if I don't find the money to produce it, to pay what, you know, look, the material we have in this little room to do just an interview is a fortune of money, you know. when a pencil is not expensive, really. I cannot have said that. I mean, I maybe said something that could be related to that. I said once that I hate the idea of making always films of, let's say, 90 to 120 minutes, because this is the format of the distribution. And I say that we should have the freedom of a writer who does a book, thick book, and the next book he has 100 pages, and sometimes he writes a little essay of 50 pages and then go back to a play, etc. That's why I'm making short films, including in the recent years, when most of the people do short to establish themselves, and when they have proved what they can do, they do features or documentary long lengths, and they don't come back to short lengths. When I do like to write or direct or make a film which is 17 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 or 3 minutes, because if you don't need more, or let's put it the other way, if you feel telling of expressing something which is not worth more than 10 minutes, why should you make? And I've made uneven lengths of film. Like I have Les Demoiselles Moins 25 ans is 65 minutes. So is documentaire. So I try to keep the length which is necessary for the film I'm making.
Before each project, at what point do you actually become fired up with enthusiasm for the subject in hand? And can you tell us how that enthusiasm and that inspiration works?
It's so mysterious. This is what I like so much, that I kept that mysterious. When in many production companies or distribution companies, well, somebody has a good idea and say, look, let's buy that bestseller book. I have a deal with Sharon Stone, or I have a 3-film contract with Depardieu, and, well, I'm friendly with Catherine Deneuve, and, well, let's call the agent who already is the agent of Catherine and ask him a director, so they will feel that they are involved, engaged, and committed. Many productions are set up like this. And here comes a director, and he's very delighted to have a good book and good actors and a good producer. This is a way of working. Now, the question you raise is that I never worked like this, and never will so far. Well, never will. I shouldn't say so far. Never have so far. Never had so far. Because I love the way you use what fires you up, is that what you say? Because it's really that question. If there is no strong, deep, and exciting inspiration which pushes me to do that or that film, I would not even consider filming. I mean, I'm not making a career. This is it. I'm making films when the need and the reason and the surrounding and that mysterious need becomes hot enough that I have to do it. Or, as you may know, with Jacques Audenard, just because I was reading Jacques' pages about his youth and childhood, and I said, oh, it would be a wonderful film. And he said, well, okay, yes, do it. That came like this, anyway, by chance. Or another time I was in the States writing a screenplay called Peace and Love, and Columbia Pictures was about to make the film, but it was, long, was difficult. So I said, well, I could do something, comment on dit marginal, aside. And I did Lion's Love, totally free, out of the studio, with an independent man who just had money to put in it because he loved the idea. And in another hand, when I was in the States in the 80s, and I was writing on a screenplay, working on it, but then I could see all these murals, paintings, and I thought, too bad nobody, make something about that, because they will disappear. I was so right, and when you go back now in Los Angeles, 3/4 of them have disappeared. At that point, I was just to grab something which was ephemeral. So sometimes the need to film is related also to ephemeral. Like a child is growing, and suddenly you say, well, we have to make a film at that point, because he has that quality of being fragile. It was the case for Mathieu Demy when I did Kung Fu Master with Jane Birkin. Mathieu was like 14, not even 15, and I'm glad I have that instant period of his youth, because now he's a grown-up boy, man, you know, and I've captured something which was fragile and wouldn't last. So, you see, I'm giving many examples of sometimes it's opportunity, sometimes it is fire, sometimes it is inspiration, and sometimes a structure of way of telling a story comes to me even before the story.
With Jacques de Nantes, it was very much a love poem to Jacques, in a sense.
Well, you know.
It feels so warm.
Yes, but you know, it's Jacques de Nantes is to start with primarily is the story of his childhood, between being, you know, 8 years old to 18 years old. And that time of his childhood and adolescence, so important, because I found out, and it is true, that most of his characters, subject, mood, and values, moral values, of all his characters in his films come from that time. And you can, and I, in a way, as a student, I would say, as a film student, I try to connect pieces of his films, of his future film, to moments of his childhood. So it was a very serious work in a way, telling that childhood. Now, I put tenderness in it, it's clear. And I even put a lot of incredible, mysterious osmose. Is that a word, osmose? Osmose is when it goes from one thing to another that you don't know how. Let me explain if I don't say the right word. I got into Jacques' memories, even things he didn't tell me. It was like I had been that person 50 years before. Very strange film, 40 years before, 50. 50 because in the 40s, I made a film in 50 years before. And because we had the chance and opportunity to film in his the real very garage where he had been raised, I thought that the walls, the place, the vibration, still being there, would give me ideas, imagination, which ended up that Jacques said it was exactly like this. So then still there is some mystery. And we should keep in mind that whenever we work, we have to work with chance and mysterious and intuition and knowledge that we don't know we have. And that's how I found out I had a knowledge of Jacques' childhood that I don't know how I had, because he didn't tell me. He never worked on the script with me. We didn't discuss the dialogue. He would come on the shooting, look at the actors playing his childhood up, and I would say to him, I mean, is it more or less? I'm approaching. He would always say it was exactly like this. The words, the places. I found places where they did some things. He said, well, that's exactly where we did it, always. So I'm glad that I can still listen in myself to the unexplained intuition, the unexplained desire of doing this and not that. And it gives me confidence that when I should listen to that. Now, when I'm not inspired like these days, because I've been in trouble with my last film, we lost so much money, there was so much trouble, I have no idea of filming, and I'm even ready to never make a film again if it doesn't come back.
Your films, were they very much a way of coming to terms with a lot of your own emotions? And once you'd gone through that journey in a film, how did you feel at the end of it?
I love the way you say coming to terms with your own emotions. Do we ever come to terms? I mean, do we ever capture them? What I never capture, what I never found, how could I say? I never found a solution, I never found an answer to something which is very present in all my films, which is contradiction. That there is no way to be one thing, like one sings, the other doesn't, because I couldn't even tell that story without having two very different women living the same problem, let's say, of birth control, but so differently. And when I did La Pointe Courte, you have a village of fishermen trying to find their union. I mean, kind of finding a way to fight the complete capitalism of the biggest exploitation. And then you have a couple, and who try to speak to each other about their couple love life. Because private and social, comment on dit? Le privé, le collectif. I mean, we have to always be ourselves as a person alone in a way, or two or three. And we have the world, I mean, the collective. And I had to put the two in the same film because I wouldn't like to have done a film about only the couple or only the fisherman. Because we switch from private to collective and collective to private all the time. We open the television set and we look at look at Bosnia, we look at Africa, and we think we are part of a horrible world where people kill themselves for religion, for money, for, racism, whatever. And in the same time, you may be home with your lover or your wife or your kids and you need tenderness or you want tenderness or you're jealous. I mean, all things are always mixed. And you go to the kitchen and something is broken, you get mad. Anyway, that feeling of many levels of life was so well expressed in Passion, de Jean-Luc Godard. I found that film incredibly rich of the addition and contradiction of whatever comes. And then he comes home with his car and he bumps the car and gets mad. Because we also have the car problem if somebody bumps you. In the same time, you're maybe in the middle of a huge emotion. Or maybe you want to give your life to save somebody. And at that time, somebody, kicks you in the street and you get mad because they steal your bag, or suddenly your bag becomes the main problem because you lost your paper. It takes 3 weeks to make new papers. And suddenly your whole emotion about Bosnia is gone, or again, the private life. So that contradiction, that impossibility to go to everything, is, I think, present in my films. Like in Saint-Ouen-l'Île, that woman, on the road, we know at the beginning of the film that she will die. But then we have that other woman, specialist of trees, platanologue, special platan trees, I don't know if you call that. And they are sick and they were about to disappear like other trees have disappeared, like I don't know the word in English. And suddenly it's worth putting money and research to save these trees. But you can question, when people are dying from the cold and from starving, I mean, shouldn't we take care of the people first and the trees later? But then you can also say the whole landscape of France would change if we don't have platane. This is a national tree in a way, No, should we allow the trees to disappear because we take care of the bumps? I mean, and from one place to another, you always switch your mind. I always switch my mind to these non-reconcilier, you cannot conciliate, you cannot put it together and find a solution. So you go from one to another, and back and forth, and that contradiction, in a way, m'énerve, got on my nerves and feeds me too. Because that contradiction pushes me always to try to grab the mixture of it, So, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but so the present feeds these contradictory problems or questions. Sometimes it's not a problem. It could be related to love and to happiness, including Les Demoiselles ont 25 ans, which is a documentary about Jacques shooting. I think it's about happiness. How can you grab it? Can you remember happiness? Does it make sense when you remember it? I mean, can you still feel happiness when it's 20 years ago that you felt it, etc.? So, past and present and contradiction, integrated or incarnated in today is what I like.
Agnès, your characters in every film make a very long journey. Do you, as a director, make that same journey as your characters?
Journée au sens voyage?
Yes.
I always felt, and don't make me look like a bum, even if I look like a bum, I'm a woman walking on the road. I always felt that, walking. To think that we shouldn't stop. I mean, it's not excitement, it's not craziness, it's not a career thing, it's not the show must go on. It has nothing to do with this. It's just, you know, well, you can lie and sleep and dream. Some people need that. And I sort of in an action dream, you know. I think I walk and dream. I feel that. But I'm not dead yet, and I'm not on the so-called pneumonia yet, not yet.
Have you at any point in your career ever thought of throwing in the towel and giving the whole thing up, reach those kind of depths of despair?
I'm there now. And I look healthy, I'm pink, and plummy, how you say that? And has nothing to do. I mean, you know, the way you look, the way you express yourself, and I like to communicate. Yesterday in Glasgow, you know, there was a room of people knowing my films, speaking about them like fluently. Somebody said with a sentence which touched me and gave me so much strength. He said, for 30 years, your films have been with us, husband and wife, you know. They said they saw Le Bonheur, and they said they had never seen my first film, La Pointe Courte, so we were so thrilled to see it. But such a sentence, you know, for 30 years your films have been with us. I mean, are they making a line to make me feel good? Maybe, even though lie is good sometimes. But, so, it's true that some of my films remain as, you know, milestones in everybody's emotional life, or film loving, or whatever. But, you know, when you lose inspiration, and my company is full of debts, and I don't see how to get out of it, and you know, less and less people go to movies, and they go to football, you know. I just crossed, they were all going to the Edinburgh Celtic against, I don't know what. The Celtic against what? You don't know? You're not...
Is it?
Huh?
I think it's Hearts.
Good. So, you know, and you see, I went to a FFF rock concert the other day. You know, I tried to catch this thing to follow what's happening, and I could see 3,000 kids. Incredibly excited, jumping with the singer were jumping, they were jumping. Put their hands like this, and some men threw themselves from the stage to their hands, and you know, it's called slamming, I don't know. In France, they could. And they were so excited, so happy with that incredibly noisy music. I know he writes nice words, no one word could be understood, because la batterie, it is so, you know, the sound system was incredibly strong, and mixed, you know, like, and well, that's what the masses, you know, that's where they like to go. Some stupid go to listen to the Pope on Saint Pierre de Rome, 2,000, 3,000 standing to have his benediction, fine. But rock concert and football, that's all there is to grab people to come to be together. So filmmaking is a kind of very small, has a very small field, a very small territory among the pleasure, among art, about industry. Because since it is an industry, the art people have contempt, and since it is arty, the economic big industry has contempt too. I mean, it's an art which is in between two situations. They don't have contempt for making cars or, you know. An artist, they don't have contempt for a painter, even if it doesn't sell too much. But we are not industry, we're not really art, and we are like this doing. And our territory is like losing territory. I mean, like, less and less people go to movies. Whatever they say, this is true. Now, more and more young people want to make movies. Because they know, even if the industry is sick, they know that this is the art of the end of the century. This is the more complex and more coherent art of our situation. And so the clips, you know, if you see the video clips on MTV or they say, they're very sophisticated, very complicated, very well made, by the way. But this is related to the big industry of music. Now, films, if it's not the big industry, and sometimes with good films of Hollywood industry and big films, making money and violence and all this. But that, they go to see that, but even a film doing fine in the industry is never doing fine as a football match. I mean, or a rock concert, you know. Our situation is we have to be very modest. I mean, there is very little room for the kind of films I make, and I'm not alone to make this kind of films. I mean, films in which we believe that the shape, the structure, the way of manipulating emotion could reach people so that they get some emotion, their emotion, not the one I sent, but something which is related to their own life, their own sense of surprise, their own sense of communication, and their own sense of malaise, unease, how to make a shape, how to give a shape to that unease where we are. But less and less people have that need of that kind of film, because in the film industry, this is already a small part. So we have to be courageous in a way, or quit, but we have to know where we are, and we are in a very small place.
Agnès Varda, like that couple in the cinema whose films have been with them for 30 years, your thoughts this afternoon will be with us for 30 years. Thank you very much.
Oh, look what a compliment I get. One in Edinburgh, one in Glasgow. It'll make my week.